last words of the Old Testament are a promise. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Malachi 4:5. And then, silence. For approximately 400 years, no prophet arose in Israel. No inspired writings were preserved as scripture. The heavens were closed. But here is what most people don't realize. The silence was not empty. It was a time of preparation. Empires rose and fell. Religious movements developed. The stage was set for the coming of the Messiah. The New Testament says, when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth His Son, Galatians 4:4. Stick with me, because once you understand what happened during those 400 years, the political upheavals, the religious transformations, the literary productions, you will realize that God was not silent. He was working. But before we explore the history, we need to understand what the Bible actually means by silence. Biblical Hebrew does not possess one word for silence. It possesses a spectrum, each word revealing a different shade of what it means to be silent. Dumah, the silence of the grave. Dumah evokes the hushed stillness of death. It is not mere quiet, but the oppressive silence that envelops the grave. The cessation of earthly speech and worship. The psalmist writes, "If the Lord had not been my helper, my soul would soon have dwelt in silence." Psalm 94:17. This is the silence of Sheol, a domain cut off from the covenant community's liturgical life. Dumiyyah, the silence of waiting. From the same root as Dumah, Dumiyyah denotes stillness, waiting, repose. In Psalm 62:2, the psalmist declares, "Truly my soul finds rest in God." The Hebrew behind rest is Dumiyyah. This is the silence of patient trust, not despair. It is the quiet of a soul that has ceased striving and learned to wait. Demamah, the silence of divine encounter. Perhaps the most significant term, Demamah, appears in the famous account of Elijah at Mount Sinai, 1 Kings 19:12. After the wind, earthquake, and fire, there came a still small voice, literally, a voice of thin silence. This is the silence that precedes divine speech, the stillness in which God's voice is heard. Harash, the silence of withholding. This verb means to be silent, to cease speaking. It signifies a deliberate withholding of speech, the silence of a king who refuses to answer, or the silence of God who chooses not to reveal. Has, the silence of awe, an interjection meaning hush. Has is the command to be silent in the presence of the divine, the silence of reverent awe. The 400 years of silence were not an absence of God. They were Dumiyyah, the silence of waiting. They were Demamah, the stillness before divine revelation. The period between the last prophetic writings, approximately 430 BC, and the arrival of John the Baptist, IC 27 AD, is commonly called the 400 years of silence. But what does this mean? This period began with the conclusion of Malachi's prophetic ministry around 430 BC and extended to the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, here is what most people miss. The Hebrew Bible, the one Jesus would have been familiar with, did not end with Malachi. It ended with 2nd Chronicles, and 2nd Chronicles ends with the decree of Cyrus allowing the exiles to return. But in the Hebrew, the sentence is grammatically incomplete. The Old Testament ends on an ellipsis, not a period. The authors were still waiting for the real return from exile and the coming of the Messianic kingdom. The silence was not an ending. It was a holding of breath. Let's look at the political landscape during these 400 years. Persian rule, 539–331 BC. After Malachi, the Persian Empire controlled the region. Persian kings like Cyrus and Darius had allowed Jewish exiles to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Internal records like the Elephantine Papyri, discovered in Egypt, confirm that Persian authorities permitted Jewish communities to worship the God of Israel. Alexander the Great, 332 BC. Then, in 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered vast territories, including the land of Israel. Greek influence, government, language, art, and culture rapidly spread. This process, known as Hellenization, would transform the Jewish world. Ptolemies and Seleucids, 323-167 BC. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals. Israel fell under the Ptolemies of Egypt and then came under the Seleucids of Syria. The Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes, whose title means God Manifest, attempted to consolidate his fading empire through a policy of radical Hellenization. He prohibited some of the central elements of Jewish practice, attempted to destroy all copies of the Torah, and required offerings to the Greek god Zeus. His crowning outrage was the erection of a statue of Zeus and the sacrificing of a pig in the Jerusalem temple itself. Maccabean Revolt, 167-160 BC. Opposition to Antiochus was led by Mattathias, an elderly villager from a priestly family, and his 5 sons, most notably Judas Maccabeus. This triggered a 24-year war, 166-142 BC, called the Maccabean Revolt, which resulted in the independence of Judah. Events commemorated each year by the festival of Hanukkah. Hasmonean Dynasty, 141-63 BC. Simon Thassi established the Hasmonean Dynasty in 141 BCE. Coins bearing Hasmonean inscriptions have been unearthed, indicating a newly established independence and sovereign minting. The historian Josephus also corroborates these events. Roman conquest, 63 BC. Internal struggles weakened the Hasmonean dynasty, paving the way for Roman intervention. Pompey took Jerusalem after a 3-month siege of the temple area, massacring priests in the performance of their duties and entering the most holy place. This sacrilege began Roman rule in a way that Jews could neither forgive nor forget. By the time of the Gospels, Herod the Great, supported by Rome, ruled as king of Judea, constructing grand projects such as the expansion of the Second Temple. While empires were rising and falling, something equally profound was happening in the religious life of Israel: the rise of religious sects. During the intertestamental period, several Jewish sects emerged that would play a central role in the New Testament. Pharisees, the separated ones. The Pharisees emphasized strict adherence to the law and oral traditions. Their name means separatist, and some scholars think this referred to separation from the Greek influence that was attempting to infiltrate Israel. Their defining characteristic was their dedication to the purity rules of the law, bringing them out of temple worship and applying them across their whole lives. By the time of Jesus' birth, they had gained significant political and social influence. Sadducees, the priestly aristocracy. The Sadducees, often associated with the high-status members of society, rejected oral traditions and focused on temple rituals. They aligned themselves more with Greek influence and disagreed with the Pharisees on several important religious principles. Their tensions were at an all-time high during Jesus' life and ministry. Some of the questions posed to Jesus and recorded in the Gospels have their roots in this disagreement. Essenes, the ascetic community. The Essenes were a more ascetic group that withdrew from mainstream society. The people at Qumran, who produced the Dead Sea Scrolls, are linked with the Essenes. Josephus mentions the Essenes 13 times in 3 works. Their writings provide valuable insights into Jewish thought and messianic expectations of the period. The rise of the synagogue. The diaspora, dispersion of Israel, accelerated during these years. Jews outside the Holy Land, cut off from the temple, concentrated their religious life in the study of the Torah and the life of the synagogue. The synagogue became a center for worship and community life. The synagogue is where Jesus would teach. The synagogue is where Paul would preach. The synagogue is where the gospel would be proclaimed to the nations. But the most significant development of this period may have been literary. The Septuagint, circa 250 BC. In the mid-3rd century BC, King Ptolemy II Philadelphus of Egypt ordered a translation of the ancient Hebrew scriptures for the Library of Alexandria. This translation became known as the Septuagint. The original version, published circa 250 BC, only included the Torah, the Pentateuch. The Septuagint made the Jewish scriptures accessible to the Hellenistic world and was widely used by early Christians. Fragments of the Septuagint discovered in archaeological sites show remarkable preservation of shared biblical passages across centuries. The Septuagint was the Bible of the early church. When Paul quoted the Old Testament, he was often quoting the Septuagint, Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha. During this period, numerous Jewish writings were composed, including the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha. These texts provide valuable insights into Jewish thought and expectations, including Messianic hopes. The most important historical writing in the Apocrypha is Maccabees. It is the primary source for writing the history of the period from 180 to 134 BC. The events are also noted by the historian Flavius Josephus in his work Antiquities of the Jews, Book 12, sections 265-268. Apocalyptic literature. A special trend developed during this period, apocalypticism. Apocalyptic literature spoke about the nature of God and about the last days. It was the literary expression of Israel's hope for deliverance. Perhaps the most significant development of the intertestamental period was the heightening of Messianic expectations. The hope of Israel. Jewish Messianic expectation in the Second Temple period referred to the idea that God would give a better world to come through His Anointed One. The figure of the Messiah appears in many Second Temple period texts. The oppression and challenges faced by the Jewish people during this period heightened their anticipation of a Messiah, a divinely anointed leader who would restore Israel's fortunes and establish God's kingdom. When John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, he broke the silence. He was the voice that cried out, the Elijah who was to come. And when Jesus began his ministry, he announced, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor." Luke 4:18. The silence was over. The word had arrived. Now, let's bring this all together. The 400 years of silence were not years of divine absence. They were years of divine preparation. During those centuries, empires rose and fell, the Greek language became the common tongue, the Septuagint was translated, the synagogue was established, and messianic expectations were refined. God was moving all the chess pieces into place. The Apostle Paul wrote, "When the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth His Son." Galatians 4:4. The silence was a pregnant pause. The waiting was a preparation. The emptiness was a filling. And when the Word arrived, the Word was Jesus. Next week, I am going to take you deep into the book of Daniel and show you why his prophecies were the bridge between the testaments. Because the silence was never really silent. Dumiyyah. The silence was preparation. The waiting was worship. And the Word was on its way.